Hello, ladies. I hope you are well. It's Friday. We're talking about menopause today. I'm just getting myself sorted here. I have like you guys on Zoom here, but I also like to have you up on my phone so that I can see who is joining me, who is watching me. So hello, 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 hello. Yes, we're talking about perimenopause today. So I don't even know if I've ever done a chat like this before, but oh gosh, my camera. But considering the fact that, let's see if this works. Wait a minute here. Okay, I'm gonna have to use my lower one. I'm gonna order a new camera. But considering the fact that this is a perimenopause group, it would make sense that we would have a chat about perimenopause. So I've got some fun little graphics for you guys today. We're gonna be talking about a bunch of stuff. We're going to talk about the top 10 signs that you're in perimenopause. We're going to take a look at what your menstrual cycle is doing, because in order to understand what is happening in perimenopause, you have to understand what is happening before perimenopause. So I'm going to go through the menstrual cycle. I think most women have no idea, apart from the fact that they have their period like once a month. I don't think they really have a good understanding of what is actually happening. We're going to talk about the 4 stages of menopause. We're going to talk about this concept of perimenopause as the as estrogen's storm season, and I'm going to show you some graphics that are going to help you understand what that means. We're going to talk about how perimenopause affects more than just estrogen, because I think that's what is sort of like in the major, if you find a blog on menopause, they're going to talk about estrogen, but there is way more happening than just estrogen. We're going to talk about signs of estrogen dominance, signs of estrogen deficiencies, signs of progesterone deficiencies. We're going to talk about how to manage, just generally speaking, like what can you do as a woman 35 plus to just manage perimenopause and menopause. And then if we still have some time, I'll certainly open it up to some questions. But for right now, if you are joining me live, just put a live in the comments and let me know where you're joining me from. And I also want you to tell me, where do you think you're at? Do you think you're in perimenopause? Do you think you're before that? Do you think you're in menopause? Do you think you're postmenopause? Like, where do you think you're at? And that'll just also give me a little bit of a sense of like where everyone is at in their journey. And if you are watching this on replay, do the same thing, but just put a replay and then tell me where you are at. All right. If you are brand new to the group, hello, my name is Haley. I am the moderator here. I also happen to be a nutrition coach and an online personal trainer. And this is what I do. I help women in perimenopause that are struggling with weight gain or like weight loss resistance or low energy or just like not feeling like themselves anymore. So anyways, that is a little bit about who I am. And we are going to jump in. So I'm just taking a look here to see. All right, so I see Chelsea is here. I see Tammy. I see Jamie. Hello, hello. So I'll be keeping an eye on the comments as well. So if you guys do have questions while I'm chatting, feel free to put them in the comments, because I can see your comments even though I am on Zoom. And let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to go over sort of like the top 10 signs that you're in perimenopause, just as a beginning here. And you guys might remember, hi Lula, you guys might remember like Letterman's top 10. You remember that? If you are from my generation, then you certainly probably spent as a teenager a lot of time watching David Letterman, and he used to do like his top 10. Anyways, I will be nowhere near as funny as him, but here are your top 10 signs that you are in perimenopause. And as I'm going to go through them, I want you to like count how many signs you have, and then I want you to put it in the comments, okay? So sign number 1, you're a woman over the age of 35, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, you don't really feel like having sex at time anymore. Number 3, you have signs of estrogen dominance. And this could be like you're PMSing a little bit harder, your period's a little bit heavier, maybe you're getting some clotting, some cramping, you're kind of bitchy and moody right before your period. So anything like that's kind of like any sort of like amplification of PMS or of your period, okay? So that's number 3. Number 4 is you're starting to get more headaches or migraines than you did before. Number 5, you've gained some weight and it seems to be going straight to your belly. Number 6, you're starting to notice that you don't need to wear as many clothes. You're a little bit hotter. Maybe you have some night sweats. Maybe you have some hot flashes, but you're certainly starting to just kind of feel like maybe you're just like, it's getting hot in here, right? Maybe you don't have to wear your sheets as much at night. Number 7, you are struggling with poor sleep. So maybe like insomnia, right? Like you can't fall asleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, whatever it may be. Your hair is starting to thin, right? You're starting to lose clumps of hair. So fun, right? You keep forgetting things, like you feel like your brain is no longer functioning anymore, or potentially you're starting to get acne like you did when you were a teenager. Okay, so now that I've given you all of those, hi Julie, hi Tammy, hi Therese. Okay, I want to hear how many signs you resonate with. Like, so put it in the chat, like how many of those do you feel like you currently have? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump into the menstrual cycle. I'm gonna share my screen. So you guys put those numbers in and I'm gonna find the first little slide that I wanna share with you guys, okay? All right, let's see here. Share screen. Okay, I want to share, where is it? Where is it? Oh, this one. Okay. All right. Okay. So you guys should be able to, Lula said 6. Let's see, 6, 6, 6. Okay, you guys are definitely in perimenopause. Welcome. Chelsea says 7. All right. Okay. So what you're looking at here is, like I said, I want to kind of explain what a regular cycle looks like, because then I'm also going to show you what a cycle looks like when you're in perimenopause, and it's going to all start to make sense. Okay, so and again, you know, I think that most women have really no idea what is happening when they're going through their cycle. So I'm going to point out a couple of things. So down here at the bottom, this is your endometrial cycle. So this is what is happening to your uterine lining. And you can think of your period as like, it, you know, everyone has their own period length, but okay, let's just pretend it's 28 days. So the first 2 weeks of your period, which starts on the first day of your period, is the follicular phase, and the second one is the luteal phase. And this is important to understand because, again, as you'll see, these are, you're going to see how this changes during perimenopause. Okay. So hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining. Okay. So, okay, where am I at? Okay. So understand I'm going to kind of point out a couple of different things. I'm probably going to forget some things here, but that's okay. Okay. So follicular phase is the first 2 weeks of your period. Luteal phase is the last 2 weeks of your period. Somewhere in the middle, around day 14, you ovulate, right? This is what typically happens. So this one here, FSH, is follicle stimulating hormone, and this LH is luteinizing hormone. These are 2 hormones that they stem from the pituitary in our brain, and they stimulate estrogen and progesterone. They tell estrogen and progesterone what to do. Now, maybe you're like, progesta who? Progesta what? So we have multiple sex hormones, but as women, the 2 dominant ones that have a really massive impact on our menstrual cycle are estrogen and progesterone. Everybody knows estrogen, right? Although I think women think that estrogen is really all about their cycle, but I don't know how much time we'll have to dig into it, but estrogen plays a lot more roles in the body than just giving you your period. In fact, we have estrogen receptors everywhere, including our brain. Okay. And progesterone It's sort of like the maybe not as well-known female sex hormone, but it also plays a very important role in the body. When it comes to our menstrual cycle, progesterone is what helps us build the uterine lining in preparation for a baby. Okay. Now, what I want you to notice here is, let's look at estrogen. So estrogen. So first of all, as you can see, like when you are having your cycle, everything's low, right? And some people say that this will give you a good idea of what menopause is going to feel like, because it's the exact same as menopause, right? You have like little to no estrogen, little to no progesterone, right? Then in that first 2 weeks, estrogen levels start to climb, and then we ovulate right here, and then whoops, see how it drops all the way down, and then it climbs up a little bit in that second half, and it comes back down for our bleed, right? Whereas progesterone is very different. So progesterone is pretty much like non-existent in the first 2 halves of our cycle, and then it starts to go up, and then it comes back down. Now, estrogen and progesterone are always we're always looking at where they're at in relation to each other. So like sometimes like women I'll ask me like, what are your goals? And I'm like, oh, I want to balance my hormones. Okay, can you be more specific? And they're like, well, I don't really know. I just want to balance my hormones. And I'm actually going to do a talk on that next Friday, because we're going to clarify what that actually means. But one of those is that ratio of progesterone to estrogen. They're like yin and yang, right? So they interact with each other, and progesterone kind of keeps estrogen in check. Okay. And so if you look again at what a regular cycle should look like, hi, Heather, as you can see, in this first half of our cycle, estrogen is much higher than progesterone. It is a phase of our cycle where we are estrogen dominant. We have more estrogen than we have progesterone. And there are certain things that are associated with estrogen dominance, and we can talk about that. And then later in that second half, after we've ovulated and luteinizing hormone peaks, what that does is suddenly now we have this increase in progesterone, and estrogen is down here. So that second half of our cycle, we are progesterone dominant. And again, these two hormones play different roles in our body. And so this is what a normal cycle looks like. And I'm going to point out one more thing, okay, which is just this whole follicular development thing here, because this is super key. So basically what happens, right, is we start to produce this follicle, which has to do with follicle stimulating hormone. And then right around the time of ovulation, the follicle kind of bursts open and releases the egg. But this follicle now has a very important role. It becomes this little shape here, which is called the corpus luteum. This is where progesterone mainly comes from. Okay, so if you don't ovulate, you don't get this. And I'm going to show you what that means in a few seconds here. But this is just like a basic understanding of what a woman's cycle should look like. And we're going to come back to this. But first, I want to talk. Let me just go back to my slide and remember where I'm at. Okay, so that's the normal one. So now the next thing I want to show you guys is like sort of the different phases of let me just stop share here so I can find my next screen. I want to show you the different stages of menopause. And I think this is where terminology is not really benefiting women our age, because personally, when I was like 36, 37, 38, whatever, I thought of menopause as like something that old women dealt with. Because back then I thought that when you were close to 50, you were old. Now I'm like, I'm only 3 years away. But anyways, I thought that menopause was just like you got hot flashes and you stopped having your period. That was pretty much all I knew. And I was like, I don't need to worry about that at all right now, because I'm nowhere near that stage in my life. And I think that one of the problems is that women don't understand that there are different phases of menopause, one of which is perimenopause. And we spend way more time in perimenopause than we do in menopause. And so really, when we're talking about menopause, we're really talking about perimenopause. And when we're talking about all of the different things that happen, like the hot flashes and the night sweats and the weight gain and the low energy and the brain fog and the loss of memory and all of that stuff, we're actually talking about what happens to a woman in her 40s, not in her 50s. And so again, there's just like this little bit of I think there's just some confusion in the terminology. So I'm going to show you guys a chart. Let me just share my screen here, which is the one I want to show you. Okay, I'm going to show you this one first. Okay, so I'm also going to take a sip of my coffee. Okay, so this shows the different phases of menopause. So instead of thinking it as menopause, start calling it the menopause transition, okay? And as you can see, there's like very early menopause, there's the menopause transition, and then there's late perimenopause, okay? But as you can see, like, so just so you know, perimenopause, depending on the woman, can last up to 15 years, okay? 15 years, which is why I say 35 plus, because 35 is actually when you start to see changes in your hormones that affect everything. It happens at 35. And so when women like, you know, I invite women that are about 35 to join my group, and they're like, I do not need to join your group. I'm like, yeah, you do, because you need to understand this stuff now. Now is the time to start working on it, not when you're, you know, feeling like crap when you're 48. So anyways, I diverge. Okay, so these are the different sort of phases. And so very early menopause, or very early perimenopause, sorry, this is when you start to notice changes in experience. And so this could be like your boobs get more tender before you have your period, or you know, your period's getting a little bit heavier, or you're starting to get migraines, or you're starting to gain weight, even though nothing's changed, but nothing's changing to your cycle. You still have a regular cycle, but it's just like, you're like, man, I must be getting old, because like things just don't work as well as they used to, right? So that is sort of like very early perimenopause. And like I said, this can start at 35. It won't necessarily start at 35, but this is where most experts agree. This is when our hormones start to change. Then you enter what is like this menopause transition. And this is like, there's like two phases, early and late. So early, which for a lot of women is probably going to be around the age of 47, 48-ish. This is when suddenly like your periods start to get irregular. And so maybe like some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are heavier. Maybe you start to get like blood clots, or very, very heavy bleeding. Again, every single woman is unique. You're going to have your own experience of this. Maybe you start to, you know, like you're now, the signs and symptoms are clearly in your menstrual cycle, okay? Late menopause transition, which is probably going to be for most women like 50, 51, 52 kind of thing. Then what we're going to start to notice is this is when you're going to start to skip periods, right? So you're going to be like, I haven't had a period in 3 months, okay? And this is the sign that you're getting there. You're almost there. Like, just hang on. You're almost there. You're moving into menopause. Then you will have your final period, and you won't know it's your final period, okay? But you will have your final period eventually. 12 months later is menopause, and it's 1 day, and it's the 1 day that you have not had your period for 12 months. And then for some people it comes back and you're like, no, but anyways, that's it. Everything else, it's all perimenopause. It is all perimenopause, except for that 1 day when you can finally say, I have not had my period for 12 months. Everything leading up to that, perimenopause, which is why this group is called Perimenopause Body Solutions, because menopause is just 1 day, and we need to change that terminology. And then after that, you're postmenopause. And we're not going to talk about that today, because today We're talking about perimenopause. All right, okay. I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop share again because I don't know how to switch from one to the other. Okay, so now what I want to show you is, let's take a look at this one here. Okay, I'm going to blow this one up. And the quality of this one isn't the best because I stole it off of a presentation. But this one here, this what I want to show you, because now I'm going to start to explain like some of the changes that start to happen. Oh, there's another one I wanted to show you first. But where is it? Oh boy. Where is that one? Well, that's annoying. I can't find it. Okay, that's all right. I'll just explain it to you. Okay, okay, let's start here. So what happens when we're going through perimenopause, right? So what is happening to our hormones? So the first thing you need to understand is that progesterone is the first hormone that's going to start to crash or to fall or to you're going to have less of. And because of that, your let's see if I can find it because this is annoying. Okay, wait a minute. Where is that? Let's see if I go from one to the other. Does that work? No, it doesn't. Anyways, okay. Okay. So progesterone starts to tank before estrogen. And so both estrogen and progesterone levels start to come down during perimenopause, but progesterone falls faster. Now, if you remember, hold the Alt key and push when you're looking for certain documents. Oh boy, I don't know if I can do that all at once, Michelle. I'm apparently very technologically challenged, but that's okay. Okay, so progesterone drops faster than estrogen. And what happens is that we become naturally more estrogen dominant. Okay, so we have more estrogen in relation to progesterone. And this is what is causing some of the signs and symptoms that we're experiencing, like the heavier, like the PMS and the mood swings, increased appetite, the acne, the migraines. All of these things is partially due to the fact that we have more estrogen in relation to progesterone than what our body likes. And so we are now off, like our hormones are out of balance. Like when we're talking about hormonal imbalances, perimenopause is a time of hormonal imbalances. And so it's really important to understand that, again, you're straight off the get-go, you're going to have more estrogen than progesterone. And there are certain things that are going to make this worse and certain things that are going to make this that you can do to tame that. And we're going to get to that, but that's the first thing you need to know. And that's sort of like in that very early perimenopause that I showed you. Then when we get to that menopause transition, what can start to happen is two things. Number one, estrogen goes batshit crazy. And I'll try to find the graph again. Let's see if I can find it because I really want you guys to see this one. Where is it? Oh, man. Oh, this one. Let's see if we can open this up. Okay. I gotta like stop share for some reason. Okay, here it is. Okay, this is estrogen's life cycle. Okay, so this says a lot right here. So as you can see, like when you're a teenager, this is estrogen. When you're a child, like you don't have any, and then puberty hits and you start to get some estrogen, and whoa, it's kind of crazy, right? It's up and down. It's up and down. This is why teenagers are like moody, right? And then this is pre-menopause. This is like where you're at when you're, fertile and having babies up until the age of like 35, 40-ish. This crazy crap right here is perimenopause. Okay, so this is estrogen going all over the place. Sometimes estrogen super high, sometimes estrogen super low, sometimes you're in a great mood, sometimes you feel like killing everyone in your house, sometimes you're motivated to go mountain biking, sometimes you just want to sit and cry on your couch. Like that is this craziness right here. And then postmenopause. Okay, but I really wanted you guys to see this because, again, estrogen dominance, right? Like this is a period of estrogen dominance. And it's like, so progesterone's just kind of slowly tanking. Estrogen's going crazy. And so there are going to be periods in your life, and this will be like one cycle might be one thing, the next cycle might be something totally different, but you're gonna like, this is why we start to like be like, what is wrong with me? It's because our hormones are like literally all over the place, worse than when we were teenagers. And so if you live with a teenager, like, oh, I'm so sorry for you because you're both going through the same thing. Okay, now I'm going to show you the other one that shows estrogen dominance. I'm just going to do it a different way. Let me just pull it up here because I do want you to see this. I just have to use my very non-techie way of doing it here. Okay, share screen. Yes. Where is that one? I don't know. Anyways, okay, it's all right. We'll just go back to this one. Okay, so that's that again. That is sort of like the earlier phases of perimenopause, and then moving into sort of like when you're starting to see changes in your cycle. So then this happens, and what I'm showing you here is something called an anovulatory cycle, which can also happen prior to being in perimenopause. And I can attest to that because I had anovulatory cycles in my 30s. And I'll tell you why, because I was trying to have a six-pack. And so I was training like crazy and restricting my calories. And my body was like, screw you, you are not having a baby. And so I tried having babies for 5 or 6 years until I finally kind of caught on. Anyways, long story short, I was having an ovulatory cycle. Stress has a massive impact on your sex hormones, and we're going to talk about that, but that's proof. But, and in my 30s, I had some control over that. I just had to stop burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. But when you hit perimenopause, you can still have these anovulatory cycles, but at this point, it has nothing to do with, well, it can, but you can't stop it. It's just part of aging, right? Like our hormones aren't working as well. The ovaries are starting to kind of get tired. They're kind of getting ready for retirement. And sometimes we don't ovulate. Now, if you remember at the very beginning, what I told you about the corpus luteum, right? About like the body produces the follicle, we ovulate, the follicle opens up and releases the egg. What happens to the follicle? It becomes the corpus luteum. What does the corpus luteum do? It produces most of our progesterone. So when we start having these anovulatory cycles, this line here, I know it's kind of blurry, but this line here, this is what progesterone should be doing in that second phase. This is what it ends up doing if we have an anovulatory cycle. And so now there is no 2 weeks where we are progesterone dominant. It is always estrogen dominance, okay? So this is gonna have a huge impact on how you are experiencing menopause, okay? So progesterone goes down first, estrogen goes crazy, and then eventually estrogen also starts to go down. And then you're going to start to notice even more signs and symptoms because now you are both progesterone deficient and you are estrogen deficient. And this, one of the experts that I follow, her name is Dr. Kristen. I can't remember her last name. Anyways, she refers to this as hormonal poverty. And this is when we just don't have hormones. And we can talk. Anyways, I'll do, this is a little parentheses, okay? So I really like, and this, we're kind of talking about, I'm going to kind of talk about hormone replacement therapy here too. But in the research that I've been doing on perimenopause, on menopause, on hormones, here's one thing that has stood out to me that I feel nobody has ever taught me in my life, and I had to learn by myself, is that, again, these different, these estrogen and progesterone, they control our menstrual cycle, but they control way more than that. Estrogen protects us against type 2 diabetes, against Alzheimer's, against bone loss, against cardiovascular disease. Our brain needs estrogen. That's why we get hot flashes. Progesterone, same thing. You know, progesterone is our calming hormone. It's kind of like serotonin. What I'm trying to say is that these hormones, they play a much bigger role in our body than simply just getting us to have our period. And so when we get to this point in our life where we are post menopause and we have very little progesterone and very little estrogen, we are in hormonal poverty. And Dr. Kristen and many other women's health experts believe that pretty much all women should be on hormone therapy for the rest of their life. Now, obviously, this is a personal opinion, and this is something that you need to kind of do your own research into. But I just want to like plant that seed because I think it's a really important thing to consider. Okay, we're going to get back to, I'm going to stop sharing now so that, because we don't need to see that one anymore. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the signs and symptoms associated with these changes in your hormones. So low progesterone. Okay, so again, I'm gonna give you like sort of the main ones. I want you to count on your fingers which ones you have, and then I want you to put in the chat what you come up with. Okay, so number one, more anxiety. Okay, more anxiety. Number two, a difficulty handling stress. Number three, elevated cortisol, which is the stress hormone. You may or may not know if you have this problem. Number four, estrogen dominant conditions, PMS, heavy periods, PCOS, fibroids, cysts, endometriosis, breast cancer. These are all estrogen dominant conditions. Number five, headaches. Number six, water retention. Number seven, weight gain around the belly. And number eight, insomnia. So of those, put it in the chat. I'm going to take a look. I want to see how many of those signs and symptoms of low progesterone that you have. Okay. I'm just keeping an eye on my chat here. I'm taking a little sip of coffee. It's decaf, by the way. I can see some of my clients are on here. So I'm like, it's decaf, I promise. Okay. All right. So Michelle said 3 to 4. Chelsea said 6. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about signs of estrogen dominance. Same thing. Okay. I want you to count. So acne, depression, estrogen dominant conditions, right? Same as before. PMS, heavy periods, PCOS, fibroids, cysts, endometriosis, breast cancer, all of the above, right? Fatigue, fluid retention, gallstones, irritability, loss of sex drive, weight gain, hot flashes, and night sweats. Those happen when estrogen is both high and low. Breast tenderness. Okay, how many of those do you have? And I'll wait and give you guys a second to put that in. Okay. So again, these are all the different signs and symptoms that you may experience during perimenopause, right? So if you're like ticking off like left, right, and center here, then there's obviously I'm not a doctor and this is not a diagnosis, but this is certainly something for you guys to use as potential signs and symptoms that maybe it's time to get some testing done. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the last one, which is when estrogen is low. And this is probably going to be a good sign that you are nearing the end of perimenopause, because again, remember, estrogen doesn't drop until the end. So this is probably more what you're going to experience towards the end. Brain fog, painful intercourse. Estrogen has a massive role in pelvic health and bladder health. I know someone was asking about like bladder, and yes, it's related. Like I'm telling you, estrogen does a whole lot of stuff for our body. vaginal dryness and vaginal atrophy, which is when we start to lose like strength and muscle. It happens in our vagina as well. UTIs, what is it? Uterine tract infection, I think. Anyways, we get more of them when we are postmenopause. In fact, listen to this, ladies. A lot of women, because they lose sensation in their pelvic pelvic area, there are women postmenopause that get a UTI but don't realize that it's there and can go into like really serious, like, I don't know if it's septic shock, but anyways, when like an infection goes wild. So not fun. Hot flashes and night sweats. Anyways, those are like signs of low estrogen. And again, likely not going to happen to you until later in perimenopause. Okay. Now, the one thing I want to say, so hopefully that's given you guys a good idea of what is happening and what to expect. And I know it all sounds super doomsday right now, but we will talk about like what we can do. But I just also want to make sure that you guys understand that menopause does not just affect our sex hormones. Yes, it affects estrogen and testosterone, but it affects way more than that, because all of these hormones are interrelated. And so when there are changes happening in one place, there are changes happening elsewhere. Life is catching up to us, which influences other hormones, which influence sex hormones. It's like this big spider web. Like all of our hormones are interrelated. And so, again, I think when menopause is discussed, oftentimes like estrogen is the only hormone that is being like talked about, but there's way more. So for instance, estrogen is tightly related to serotonin and dopamine, which is why so many women during perimenopause start to experience depression and mood swings, because there are real changes happening to those hormones. And those are two hormones that are supposed to keep you happy, right? Insulin is another one that, and we're going to talk more about this one, but you've probably heard me say this before. As estrogen levels decline, insulin resistance goes up. As progesterone declines, as actually progesterone and estrogen decline, we become more susceptible to cortisol, the stress hormone, and our adrenals get impacted. The thyroid gets impacted. Estrogen and the thyroid are tightly connected. So when estrogen starts to change, the thyroid starts to change. We also start to experience muscle mass loss, which affects the metabolism, and sarcopenia and bone density health. And all these things are happening. Our sleep-wake cycle. So when it comes to understanding menopause, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's about a lot more than estrogen. Okay. Okay. So what are we going to do about it? Right. So I can't get into all of it today, because I could be here for 2 hours. And this is what I talk about in all of these different workshops. So if you're just new, if this is the first time that you've listened to me talk, we'll just come back every Friday or go back, because I talk about all of this stuff all the time. I've just never done a chat specific to just really explaining what happens to perimenopause. So, but I'm going to give you a little bit of, hey, my cat's biting me. Cats are so weird, aren't they? They're not dogs. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So I'm going to share a little bit of a pyramid, and you might want to grab a piece of paper and a pen here and write this down. And this pyramid, I got this from Dr. Jade Tita, who I took an extensive course on the female metabolism with him. And he's actually just coming out with a course on thyroid, which I'm thinking of doing in my zero spare time. But anyways, but he gave me this pyramid, and I think it's a really good one. Okay. And so, what do we have to, like, where do we have to start when it comes to like taking care of our energy levels, taking care of weight management, feeling our best, looking our best as we make this transition, this 10 to 15 year transition through perimenopause. Okay. So if you draw like a triangle on a sheet of paper, And we're going to start at the base, where it's kind of like the most important to the least important, or the most impact to the least impact might be a better way of saying it. Okay. So at the base, and you're going to be surprised by what I say here, calories. Okay. And you might be surprised because I always say that it's more than calories in, calories out. And it is, because the rest of the pyramid has nothing to do with calories, but calories do count, right? Like, you can be like doing everything for all of your hormones, but if you're overeating or undereating, either way, and I'm going to talk about this specific pyramid more next Friday, but basically, if you think of this pyramid, you got to get your calories in check. Okay. That's number one. And you know, there's a pretty good chance that you probably can't get away with as much as you did before the age of 35. The second thing that you need to get in check, and this is the one that most women do not get in check, is cortisol. So cortisol is your stress hormone. But because progesterone is the first hormone to tank, and because progesterone protects us, it's our calming hormone, it protects us against the negative effects of cortisol, that should be the next area of focus for you, is doing what you can to manage cortisol. And that requires a lot. I've done a talk on cortisol, so I'm not going to go into all of it right now, but basically it's about managing both physical stress and psychological stress. Okay. That's second. Then insulin. Insulin is the next one, right? And this is going to be, there's kind of like two phases to insulin, in my opinion. So for ladies who are in early perimenopause, you still have plenty of estrogen, and estrogen helps with insulin sensitivity. That being said, if you have a crappy diet, you will have problems with insulin resistance. This is the time in your life where you have to become more diligent with your nutrition. And seriously, like your life or your habits that you had in your 20s and your 30s, they're catching up to you by now. And insulin resistance develops over time. And I think this is a phase in women's lives where like it's catching up to us and we start to develop insulin resistance, or we start to develop like early signs of it, right? So that's sort of like in the earlier phases when you still have plenty of estrogen, but you can still be insulin resistant. This is the time to get it in check, because when estrogen levels drop, you're going to become even more insulin resistant. And this is when women then start to develop various diseases that are associated with insulin resistance, such as metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's and so many other things, right? So calories, cortisol, insulin, okay? Those are like the first three. From there, thyroid, right? I'm not like adrenals and thyroid. So we talked about cortisol, but I'm going to just go back to that for a second and kind of wrap in adrenals. So here's another thing, and I forgot to mention this, but when your body starts to have these anovulatory cycles where we're not producing the corpus luteum, and therefore we don't have as much progesterone, all of the progesterone production now goes to our adrenals. But if we're not managing our stress, our adrenals are too busy pumping out cortisol. They have no time for progesterone or testosterone or DHEA or all of these other hormones that come out of the adrenals. So adrenal health is going to be really, really important. Thyroid, like I said, thyroid is connected with both insulin and with estrogen and with cortisol in the adrenals. And so, see, I told you, it's kind of like this ripple effect. So we need to start thinking about about thyroid health and getting some regular tests to see how that's doing. And then at the top of the pyramid is estrogen and progesterone. And I put them at the top because, again, if you think of like what will have the greatest impact on your how you're going to make it through perimenopause and menopause, estrogen and progesterone, I put them at the top because like you can't stop this. This is part of aging, right? Like they're gonna go down. There are certainly things that you can do to keep estrogen levels. like, remember how I showed you like how estrogen goes kind of like crazy and there are these big periods of estrogen dominance. There are certainly things that you can do to minimize the dominance of estrogen. And I did a talk on this, and we talked about the liver, and we talked about like all of the toxins in our environment, like the shampoos and the dryer sheets and everything, and how those mimic estrogen in the body. But essentially, and there are certainly like, you know, there are different like herbs and foods that you can eat to encourage the body to produce progesterone. But ultimately, I feel like this is where we have like a little bit of impact, and we can have way more impact if we start at the bottom of the pyramid, because again, they're all interrelated. Okay. And I didn't really talk about exercise much today, but just one more thing is that, you know, obviously when it comes to controlling like calories and stuff like that, obviously exercise does play a part. It is also meant to normalize estrogen levels. So if you do have estrogen dominance or some of the signs and symptoms, like regular movement is going to be really important. But when I say regular movement, I do not mean CrossFit, Orange Theory, spin classes, hot yoga, like intense, because that's going to worsen the whole cortisol issue. So regular movement, I think for women in perimenopause, again, because one of the first things I think we need to do is manage our stress, both physical and psychological, is when we're thinking about regular movement, we're thinking about like walks, or maybe a slow jog, or, you know, some forest bathing where you go and enjoy nature. And then add in either some resistance training or some short metabolic workouts to ensure that you're protecting your muscle mass. That is going to be like sort of the role of that in this whole thing. But you certainly, this is not the good time. And I am not the only one to believe this. Again, this is, you know, I'm pulling from my mentors and from the experts that I'm listening to, and they are all going to tell you that if you're not managing your stress, you're going to feel like shit throughout perimenopause. And one of those stressors is too much exercise. Okay. I know it's not super popular, and some of you are like, no, Haley, I want to exercise. I want to go for long runs. I love my CrossFit. I love Orange Theory. But anyways, take it the way you will. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about, because I've been going on for a while, and I just want to talk about supplements. As you guys know, I believe that supplements can be of assistance to, but should never replace good nutrition or good lifestyle habits. Also, this is for information purposes only. I am not a doctor. I am not your coach. I don't know you. I don't know what you're on right now. So again, I am not telling you to run out to the store and buy these. This is for information only. You need to do your homework. But some of the things that help to normalize estrogen, because again, perimenopause, period of estrogen dominance. One is indole. I'm just going to list them off, and I'll put them in the notes, and you can look at them. But indole 3-carbinol is one. D-glucarate, green tea extract, curcumin or turmeric, sulforaphane, or GLA, which is gamma linoleic acid. It's found in like primrose or borage. These are like popular oils that help with menopause. Those are all for estrogen. And then for progesterone, to boost it, because typically progesterone is going to be too low, Vitex. Okay. All right. I think I answered all of the questions that came in when I asked you what you guys wanted to know. Is there anything else that you want to know that I haven't answered that you would like to know? Lula, okay, I had to beg for cortisol and still won't do it. Lula, are you saying that they won't test your hormones? So this is a really good point. If that's what you're saying, Lula, is that my understanding from, again, all of the summits I've attended and the courses I've taken, our conventional doctors, unfortunately, are not necessarily going to be your best choice when it comes to figuring out how you feel during menopause, because a lot of them will give you sort of like band-aid solutions, like they'll give you antidepressants, or they'll put you on, various things for insulin resistance or the birth control pill or whatever, but they're not actually getting to the root cause of what is going on. And a lot of them like will not test sex hormones, like just don't see it as important, which I think is crazy. But anyways, so best bet I would say is you need to find a different doctor, or find like either a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine practitioner. And the test that you want is called the Dutch test. The Dutch test is a dry urine test. So you pee on a strip over a 24-day cycle on a very specific day during your period. It's right around day 21 or 22 when you're supposed to have that progesterone spike. And basically the Dutch test will measure everything you need to know about, Dutch test, everything you need to know about estrogen, about cortisol. It'll tell you about melatonin. It'll tell you about testosterone, DHEA, progesterone. So you can learn a whole lot about what is happening to your body with that test. Unfortunately, it's expensive. It's going to cost you probably $500 to $600 to get the test and then get it analyzed, because someone needs to analyze it for you. So it's frustrating, but unfortunately, that is just the way it is. And I know that kind of sucks. Okay. And then also, Lula, is keto bad for hormones? Okay. So there's kind of pros and cons to it. I think that, okay, so what you need to understand is, again, during perimenopause, we're talking about sex hormones. We already know that estrogen and progesterone are starting to change. What we need to understand, and I've got a post that I'm going to be putting up about this next week, actually, but we need to understand that, generally speaking, the female metabolism is more reactive than the male metabolism, because it is our biological role to carry babies, even if we don't want them at this point in our life. But biologically, our metabolism is designed to assess if we are in a position to have a baby. And if we are not in a position to have a baby, what our body is going to do is it's going to slow down the production of sex hormones to make sure that you don't get pregnant, right? So less progesterone, less estrogen. And some of the things that can make this happen, the most impactful is chronic caloric restriction and overtraining. Like, especially if you're doing the two, like that whole like eat less, move more model is probably the worst thing that women can do, especially in perimenopause. And for some women, like can literally lose their period because they have been doing it for too long. But other things that research has shown has the same impact: too much fasting. Okay. I also really think that in this, and this is like when a lot of women are really desperate in perimenopause, they try to push harder, right? They spend more time at the gym. They cut their calories more. They start fasting more and longer, and they do OMAD every single day. And it's actually making it worse, because this is one of the things that will have a negative impact on your sex hormones, right? So again, the metabolism, the brain senses that this is not good. They will shut down production of sex hormones. Keto, I think that there's no verdict, and I haven't seen like specific research. Like anti-keto people will tell you yes. Pro keto people will tell you no. My personal opinion is that what I like to do is I think keto can be a great tool. I don't think women should be in ketosis for an extended period of time, which is why I do carb cycling with my clients. And we have periods of time where we add in more carbs, and we take diet breaks, and we vary our diet, which I think is really important. There is certainly a lot of research that suggests that the body needs carbohydrates to encourage the production of progesterone, which I think is important for a woman in perimenopause. hopefully that answers that. What about at-home Dutch kit? You can get an at-home Dutch kit. You can order it, but then you still need to get it analyzed. So when you get the Dutch test, you have to pay for the test, and then you have to pay for the analysis. So if you go online and you order the Dutch test, I think it's probably like $350 US. And then after that, once you get your results, even if you do it by yourself, you won't know what to do with the results. Like I have the Dutch test here. Like I've had my results, but and I can kind of read them now based on what I know. But honestly, like you need someone to explain to you what the results are, because it's just a whole diagram with dials and this and dials and that. And if you don't have the knowledge, you're going to really struggle to know what it's all about. Any other questions? This has been a good talk. Lots of participation, some good questions. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. All right. Any other questions before I call it a wrap? And I will add one final thing. You know, I don't do this every time, but I do it sometimes. But like, if you are this woman, like if you are this woman right now in perimenopause and you're just like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. Like I designed a program to teach you all of this. It's called Perimenopause Body Solutions Personal Coaching Program. And I will teach you everything. Like I'll teach you that pyramid, you know, the calories, the insulin, the cortisol, the thyroid, the adrenals, the estrogen, the progesterone. I will teach you exactly how to eat and how to train and how to manage your stress and how to make this all a lifestyle. Because again, like the time is now. Like you've got to get a handle on it. The longer you wait, the more symptoms you have, the harder it's going to be to pull yourself out of it. So, you know, even if you're just getting into perimenopause and you're just starting to see that weight creep on and you're like, wow, I would really, you know, like, what do I do? How should I eat? How can I prepare? I can teach you. That's why I created this program. So if you are interested, just reach out to me and just ask me for some more information. I'm happy to send it your way. And there's also next week, Little Black Dress Project starts again. It'll give you a piece of the puzzle. It'll give you the insulin piece. Okay. We're not covering everything. It's like a mini version of my personal coaching program. And it's 6 weeks. It's group coaching with meal plans and grocery lists. And we do little sessions like I'm doing right now. And it'll teach you that insulin puzzle. It'll teach you how to control that. So if you want more information on that, you can reach out, just say, hey, I want more information about Little Black Dress or the personal coaching program. And if you have any other topics that you want me to talk about, I go live every Friday. I said I was going to keep them shorter, but like I said, I talk a lot. I don't know how to keep them shorter. So, but you're still here. So I guess I'm not overly boring. Thank you so much for joining me to the very end. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. And I will see you all next week. Bye.